Okay, welcome back. It is Mr. Brock from MrBrock.net, Rockcastle County High School, 2019 Region Academic Team Champions. Governor's Cup didn't even see us coming, but we're here, baby. Now, what's this?
Teacher of the Year.
Teacher of the Year.
Yeah.
Whoa. In social studies, sort of by this one group who thought yes. Okay. So here's what we have. We have this great paper here written by Student X. Now, Student X decided it was a good idea to write in pencil, but luckily, Student X has written so angrily and darkly on the paper, we're going to be able to grade this thing. So I'm going to walk you guys through the way I grade these essays, and hopefully it will help you get an idea of how this works. I'm going to be going back and forth between the essay and the rubric, the essay and the rubric. Hopefully that'll work out okay. All right, so the first thing I'm looking for here is context, okay? So in the period circa 1450 to 1900 CE, China traded with other countries to get silver in return for their fine items. Other countries like Spain found silver deposits everywhere, like in Latin America, and used it to buy products from China because that is the only payment that China would take, making China and Spain richer and making China known as the silver trade. But since they used slaves to mine the silver deposits, the lives of everyone involved changed, including the lives of African societies. Now, I'm going to tell this person that context right there is sweet. That context definitely tells me about what's happening, what's driving this going. All right? So I'm going to say that context, absolutely yes. I can only give this person 1 point. I want to give them 1,000. Now, I would then, though, tell this person that this thesis is crap. And here's why. All this thesis says is that life changed. And what this thesis needs to say is 2 ways broadly that it changed and 2 ways broadly that, I just realized I put context in the wrong place. 2 ways broadly, or 1 way broadly that it stayed the same. So now I'm going to do what they teach us to do at the AP reading, which is go to the end of the paper and see if they have a good thesis. And it might be that this student, at the end, put a thesis in. So let's see. Go to the back. It's kind of intense, right? Like camping. Okay. So let's see. In the period circa 1450 to 1900, labor systems in Latin America and the Caribbean affected the economies. Okay, it affected the economies, affected the cultures, and affected the ways of lives for numerous peoples involved in ways like the changes of African societies, the spark of different thinking, and the change of European countries. That is acceptable. And so this is the reason why you want to make sure that you go back and you write your thesis the second time. So this student creeped by and got that point in the last sentence, which is awesome. And so that's where we stand with their thesis and their context. Now we're going to go through and look at what they have for evidence and see what they have for analysis and reasoning. And if you guys will give me just a second. Okay, we're going to look at the rubric here really quick. I forgot to do that. I didn't consider that you guys may not have seen the rubric. Hey, Lena, can you turn this front light all the way up? I know that's not really great for you guys, but yeah. That's not great though. Well, you guys have copies of this too, so I don't think it's the end of the world. But better teacher would definitely definitely cut this part out of the YouTube video. So let's see if he does. He won't. Okay. So here's our prompt. In the period circa 1450 to 1900, labor systems in Latin America, the Caribbean, and North America affected the economies, cultures, and way of life of numerous people involved. Develop an argument that evaluates changes in labor systems in one of the following regions. So changes in labor systems. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, using this, I'm going to go back and re-look at that thesis again. Because I noticed that part of that thesis was copied and pasted. I would definitely say don't copy and paste anything out of the background information, which is this, or the prompt itself. So this is the stuff that was out of the background information. So we're not going to worry about that. Different thinking, like changes of African societies. Spark of different thinking, the change of European countries. Okay, so when we look in what the prompt is actually asking for, it's asking for changes in labor systems. So bless this student's heart, because we didn't give them the thesis point, and then we gave them the thesis point, and then looking at this a little bit harder, we're going to take the thesis point away again. Sweet Lord, bless their hearts, bless their hearts, bless their hearts. But they get a chance to rewrite, so it's all good in the hood. Okay. Let's put a 0. Okay.
Why did you want the 0?
No, that's the way you know it's a 0. It's international, Faith. You wouldn't understand. Okay. So we're going to go back to our thing. We got the context here. Okay. I noticed you have a funny ringtone back there, Taylor.
I'm trying to get this.
Are you telling me Taylor Sloat has a hilarious ringtone? I can't believe it. Okay. So here we go. Hey, is everybody back? Thank you. Okay, so we're going to see if this student is going to be able to pull some points out of here about changes in labor systems, the way people worked and the way money was fed into these systems. Looking at the context, I feel like there's a chance that the student might get some points out of here. So let's see. All right, first we're going to start here. The lives of African societies before those people were used as slaves were totally different. Africa consisted of different tribes in areas of Africa. After slave labor became a widely known use of labor, African elites and merchants would capture people from different tribes in Africa and sell them to white slave traders. Okay, now that's specific historical evidence. The slave labor system in Latin America caused African tribes to turn on each other. Okay, they're talking about a change here, but not really a change in Latin America. It's a cause that's coming from Latin America. It also caused them to live harsher lives. When traveling to places where slaves were needed on plantation work, Latin American, the mortality rate was about 13%. Traveling was harsh. Wow, that's good. The 13%, this student's going to get some points. Mortality rates of sailors that traveled along. Yeah, here's the thing though. Sailors are the people steering the ship, and so they would say passengers. But here's the thing about stuff like that. We realize that this is supposed to be a rough draft when we're grading these at the end of the year, and it's easy to miss something like that as you're going through a rough draft. I just pointed that out for the student.
Like, so,
Go ahead.
actually, I don't know if this makes sense. Is there like a grammar point?
So, the student asked if there was a grammar point. And so there's no grammar points in anything in AP. The reason I enforce a grammar point in my class is because I want people to get in the habit of writing essays to where the reader is going to assume you know what you're talking about. And if you write more clearly and neatly and more succinctly, they might lean in your direction if they're on the fence. And I can tell you, as somebody who has read AP exams, I've been on the fence a lot. And I tend to give the student the benefit of the doubt, but there's a lot of different things that could cause them not to get that. Okay, that's a good question too. So the people dying was 20% before the slave systems in places like Latin America. Not only did sailors have to worry about the spread of disease and other factors that affected their lives, but Africans also did not. However, the slave labor system affected the lives of everyone involved. Okay, so here's what I know I can do. I know I can give this student a point at least for specific examples of evidence relevant to the topic of the prompt, because the topic is labor systems, and even though this is not about a change in Latin America, it's a change caused by Latin America, and that's a really good example of a student getting that one evidence point. Okay, I'm going to keep looking and see if I can get the student the second evidence point, which I've not given up on that yet, but we're going to go through and see. Okay, now let's go through and whoa, dropping that long 18th century in there like it's nothing. Oh. Now, here's what I'm trying to say. This is an AP teacher grading your essay. Guess who's going to grade your essay in the summer? An AP teacher. And all this tells me is this kid paid attention in class. I'm on this kid's side. You know what this kid wrote here? Long 18th century. You know what this kid did not write here? A hand turkey. Okay? That's not. That's actually a pretty okay hand turkey. I'm the world's okayest hand turkey drawer. Okay, so that's very good. The Enlightenment, people came to big realizations about religion, philosophy, and science. Before the Enlightenment, people just owned slaves, saw them as property. People started to think about things more. The Enlightenment also started movements like the abolitionist movement. Before it, most people were not opposed to slavery, and after it, when the abolitionist movement began, slavery became something that a lot of people were opposed to, and this, which caused slavery to be prohibited to this day. In other ways, the slave labor system also affected European countries taking part of it, like Spain. So here's the thing, still, what this student is not doing is talking about changes in labor systems in Latin America. Now, the problem is that they are kind of talking about it, but they're not directly addressing it. If all the student would need here for this to be a solid paragraph is to talk about how, because, and what's driving me nuts here is I can tell by the way this paragraph was started that this student knows that the argument they're trying to make is that the Enlightenment led to changes in labor systems in Latin America. That's what the student's trying to say. But what ends up happening is the student gets kind of off on this path, and by the time they don't realize that the paragraph's over and they're on to the next paragraph, and they never said that the Enlightenment led to that. Okay? And so, in there, again, there's lots of specific historical evidence, but I'm not seeing that strong argument. Okay, then we're going to go on to the next paragraph. European countries that took part in the slave labor system, like Spain, for example, were affected. See, but we're talking, this student's almost made a cause and effect paper instead of a change of continuity over time. Spain used slaves from Africa, Potosi, okay, that's good. Religion was pushed more after the Enlightenment and abolitionist movements against slavery in European countries as well. But look, we're talking about it in European countries, but not in Latin America, not in the Caribbean. People argued that enslaved people before the Enlightenment, yeah. So here's where the student ends up. They definitely get this point. Man, they wrote a good paper too. And so did they use historical comparison, causation, or CCOT to frame or structure an argument that addresses the prompt or demonstrate understanding of the historical development that is the focus of the prompt? So check this out. This student actually used causation. Do you notice it's not the focus of the prompt, but they used it? So I can give this student that point as well. All right. So this student's going to come out of here with a 1, 2, 3 out of 6. And on this scale, that's an 80. That's a B. No shame in the game. And the comments I'd like to give this student is, man, this was an awesome essay, but the prompt. Gotcha. Okay, so that's a very good essay. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break after grading this LEQ, and we'll come back in just a few moments and grade another one. So I will cut that out. What did you guys, well, you know what? I'll open this up to questions from the group, and we'll stay on the YouTubes and see what you guys think. Okay, Lena.
Well, now that I'm looking at it, I don't think that answers the question right at all.
I remember a very wise, bald man yelling at a bunch of very young, smart children all year saying, everybody screams about answer the daggone question. And so not doing that, basically, I can tell you from this kid's paper right here that I just graded, that took 3 points away from that kid because that kid had specific historical evidence all over the place. And had a thesis at the end that when I first glanced at it, I thought it was doable. And had it been about Latin America, I would have given it to him. But your point of you don't feel like you actually wrote this right.
Like, I know that I have, like, the historical evidence. I have a lot of that in here.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that, like, the asking about the change of labor systems.
Mm-hmm. So student said that she knows she has a lot of specific evidence, but she wasn't sure about asking about the change in labor systems. What I'm looking for the change in labor systems here, and this is actually a reworked old APS essay that they've given before. What we're looking for is something that we talk about. Here was a labor system in the Americas, in Latin America, before the Europeans got here. Here's what it was like after. Here is how labor changed. Here is another way it changed during this time. And here's a way it stayed the same. That's all it's asking you to do. And so that's one of those things that you have to give a change and a continuity over time. Okay? So a very like watered down example of a CCOT question that I've seen teachers use with their students before is do a CCOT to the prompt of develop an argument that evaluates changes in your social life from the time period of 8th grade to sophomore year. And so can you give two changes in the way your social life, 2 ways your social life has changed broadly, and then give specifics, and then can you give 1 way that your social life has stayed the same broadly, and then give specifics. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? Okay. What other questions do we have about this essay or CCOTs overall? Yes?
So last week when I asked you if we should put the prompt in our paper, you said it was fine, but like when you were grading that, you kind of dropped because you put the prompt in the paper.
Yeah, well, so the question was, we're unclear about should we put the prompt in the paper. All right, so here's the thing that so when we write DBQs, we put the prompt in the paper. We say China was influenced by Buddhism between the years of 700 CE and 1200 CE in the following ways. It was negative as shown in documents 1, 2, and 3, and so on, right? But what we're doing is we're only giving this little part there. This student gave the intro. like gave like they call this like the background evidence, and there's just no need for that. Especially now, I know this wasn't timed, right? And so if it wasn't timed, you wouldn't have time to do that anyway. But so the way a thesis statement should look in this paper is that it should be like this: labor systems in Latin America and the Caribbean changed by X, by Y, and stayed the same by Z.
This is for LEQ.
Yeah, this is for LEQ. Well, but here's the thing too. You know, all an LEQ is a DBQ without sources. You have to give your sources. As shown in documents. Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, but you don't put as shown in documents 3, 4, and 5. Okay, good question. Other questions about this or LEQs altogether? Okay. Okay, so now we are going to take a break and have some pizza, and when we come back, our fingers will be greasier, and we will have some more LEQs to grade.